Welcome to the Intellistics podcast on language, culture, and religion. Today, I would like to talk with Shahin Nejad about something that weighs heavily on many of our minds: the deepening crisis inside Iran and the subversive ways the world responds to it. On one hand, we witness an intensifying domestic slaughter, public executions, mass arrests, the relentless use of violence executed by the IRGC, the prolonged arm of the Islamic Republic, and what increasingly feels like a regime trying to govern through sheer terror rather than any form of consent. Yet, on the other hand, we see a puzzling regional and international landscape. Powerful neighbors such as Qatar and Turkey continuing to provide economic and political lifelines to the Islamic Republic, and progressive voices abroad are conspicuously silent about the women, youth, and minorities being right now crushed in Iran inside the country. And Western capitals that appear to be very democratically inclined, they appear at the same time more concerned about the risks of regime collapse than about the ongoing human catastrophes itself. It feels as if we are witnessing a profound moral and geopolitical dissonance on that raises very uncomfortable questions about realpolitik, selective solidarity, and the limits of state terror as a tool of control. I would love to hear Shahin's thoughts about this as someone who has followed these dynamics for many, many decades so closely and insightfully on where we really actually stand today. Is the Islamic Republic entering a phase of irreversible decomposition? Did we pass the point where the fear can still stand, contain resistance? And how should we understand the complicity, or at least the kind of passivity, of so many regional and global actors in this tragedy? These questions and many other questions going through our minds, I would like to get an answer for. So I'm truly grateful for his perspective. Okay, let me just dive directly into the first question. It's about a very broader regional question. So countries like Qatar, Turkey, they often present themselves as a modern, pragmatic, if not progressive, at least pragmatic countries or actors in the region. They continue to maintain close relationship with Iran, with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Whenever I'm talking about the Iran, I mean the current Islamic Republic of Iran, and by no means the people of Iran. So, and they maintain this relationship with Tehran. They're giving somehow the lifeline to Iran. And I would like to know, for your perspective as a person who closely has been watching the developments in Iran, what really drives this relationship? I mean, if the Islamic Republic kind of would collapse unexpectedly, what lots of theorists are talking about, what would be the consequences economically, strategically, for the region? And there are shared, for example, gas fields between Iran and Qatar. There are leverages against the Saudi Arabia, regional influence that Iran might, in fact, change the geopolitical situation in the region. And how might that really reshape the balance of power in the Middle East? I think most of the scholars of Middle Eastern and Islamic studies are interested to know this hesitation that Turkey and their allies are, in fact, pursuing, expressing about that what's going on in Iran. What is the main reason? What do you think, Shahin?
There are two main reasons. First, economic motives. Second, ideological motives. Qatar, as you just touched, has a very big concern The biggest gas field in the world is located in Persian Gulf, right at the border of Iran and Qatar.
The Northern
It's
Dome.
called
Exactly.
Northern Dome in the Arab sector, and it's called South Pars in the Persian sector.
That's right.
This is very famous gas field, largest gas field in the world. And Qatar started exporting liquefied natural gas by production from this gas field and exporting gas to East of Asia, to Europe, but mainly its customer are uh, China, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Qatar became one of the richest country in the world while it was a second-hand country in the region. So Qatar was not important at all until a couple of decades ago. It wasn't like even UAE or Saudi Arabia. On monopoly of this gas field, they became the richest country or one of the top three richest country in the world. Same time, for the same period of time, in the past couple of decades, Iran didn't make even one penny out of this largest gas field in the world. Why? Because Iran was under sanction, because Iran was isolated, because Iran didn't get a chance to export gas because of the general uh, political situation in Iran and their bad relation to the industrial world. So what happened for a common field, which is there between two countries, when one of them cannot export the gas and the other one does the export, you've got a common thing, but you are making the benefit. The other side is disabled. As long as the Islamic Republic is in charge in Iran, there is no way that we export gas from this huge monster gas field. This is a breadbasket for Qatar.
Okay.
If a reasonable national government, uh, a government which really cares about the national interest takes over the power in the war in Iran, what happens immediately they pay attention to gas production and gas export from this monster, South Pars or Northern Dome. And Qatar is going to lose a huge wealth in the coming decades. So that's for Qatar. For Turkey, as our dear neighbor, their economy has become bigger than Iranian economy. While
Mm.
at the time of the revolution, 1979, it was way behind Iran. They've got two benefits. One, because of the Sharia law in Iran, because of the lack of personal freedom in Iran, many people moved even temporarily to Turkey. They bought lands, houses, villas in
Sure.
order to get residency of Turkey. And the minimum investment was $500,000 per family. So about 100,000 cases happened that they bought properties in Turkey. That's about $50 billion just for buying properties. Every year, 5, 6 million Iranians go from Iran to Turkey, either for vacation or to get a chance to see their relatives or friends or family who comes from US, from Europe, from Australia, Canada. So in terms of tourism, Iranian on their own almost cover half of the income of Turkey tourism income on their own. This is a huge amount for Turkey. Turkey doesn't have resources, oil and gas. On the other hand, on top of it, because of the sanction on Iran, Turkey helps the Iranian government to bypass the sanction. So they managed to get a product which cost only $1,000 for the sake of argument. In
Yes.
US, they get it to Iran for $10,000. Who takes the benefit? The corrupted Iranian leaders and the big guys in Turkey. So Turkey has also its own economic motive. And Saudi Arabia has common fields with Iran, oil fields. So also they know that as long as the Islamic Republic is there, there is no way that they develop these oil fields and get a portion of what Saudi is going to sell in the coming years. But on top of this economic motive, we've got ideological motive by Qatar and Turkey. These two regimes have been advocacy of Islamization, not only in their own countries, but also out of the country. Today, in Europe, in US, in Canada, in Australia, all the Islamic centers, all of these, not all, but majority of the mosques or religious schools that you see, they have been funded by Qatar mainly, and in some extent by Turkey.
Exactly.
So if a secular or laik national regime comes on in Iran, what happens? This process of Islamization in the region and in the West somehow gets stopped. Iran was the first country which fell into this trap in 1979. And after the Iranian Revolution, the fanatic Muslims, the fundamentalism, the political Islam, whatever you call it, got expanded everywhere in the region. And in the past, I would say, past 20 years in Europe and even in North America. So they are concerned that if Iran won't be an Islamic regime anymore, this movement can really impact their neighbor countries, also the whole region, and it can become a very good sample for a nation which managed to come out from rulership of a theocracy. And Qatar and Turkey also, they are not 100% or explicitly against the US and the West, but the way that they have acted in the past several years, you can see that ideologically they've got some dependency with the Islamic Republic. Also, those two are Sunni, and the Islamic Republic of Iran is Shia. But all three have this tendency very, very significantly.
Interesting. So you mentioned so many issues that I really would like to tackle on one by one. First of all, I read shorter reports about the fact that the 16% of the world gas reserve um, are actually northern dome, respectively, in the southern parts of Janubi in Persian. So it means the about 16% of the world gas reserve are actually deposited in this region. Now, in the last report, they said that Qatar and Iran, they divided between themselves the 8% and the other 8%. Now, the excavations that they did to reach the gas, make that fluid to send to the Europe and Southeastern Asia, apparently the every type of excavation that will be done on the Qatari side are reaching to the natural gas resources, but the Iranian parts deliberately and according to the reports intentionally, the excavations are exactly dug in the places where they cannot reach the gas, and every simple excavation and every single pillar that they are digging down there to reach the natural resources have to be delivered previously prior to that to the Qatari emirs to approve it. So it means if they would know that's a failure, they would approve it. That's what the actually reports are talking about. It means actually all the beyond all the sanctions that happened on the Iranian side, there is also a strategic failure deliberately done, executed by the Qataris, that those excavations would not reach the natural resources. What do you think about that?
Yeah, we have had significant production from the Iranian sector of the South Pars or North Dome field, but all of that have gone for the domestic consumption. We never got a chance to export even 1 cubic feet of that gas.
Mm.
Gas is a commodity which is very valuable if you can export it. And when you say 16% of the gas reserve, it's very important where it's located. When it's in the somewhere which is few thousand miles far from sea or ocean, its value is less than when it's right in the Persian Gulf, ready to export. Therefore, the location is very, very important. The size is huge. And something which is very important for gas export is the security of demand and supply. Because gas is not like oil. In oil, you can produce it, put it in the tanker, and ship it to anywhere in the world. Depends on your customer, depends on which refinery is going to purchase your crude oil. About gas, it's a mutual project. A buyer and a seller usually go to 25, 30, 35 years contract because it's a mutual uh, investment. I want to sell gas to you. I'm Qatar or Iran, and you are Singapore or Taiwan or Japan. So, because I want to ensure that when I spend this huge amount of money for pipeline or for LNG tankers and processing facilities, you buy it from me at least for 30 years, 35 years, I get you involved. So let's go 50 for 50 or 70, 30%. So that gives us a security that I know this is my buyer and you get a security. I've got supply for 3 or 4 decades or half a century. About Iran, since this government, this regime has been under sanction because of its behavior, because of its stupid international general policy, the Iranian people, the Iranian nation, didn't have this privilege to use the income of these gas fields for development of the country. And this is not the only gas field. We've got gas fields in the southwest, in the northeast. Right now, the gas export rate of Iran is zero. Zero. We've got pipeline to Turkey. Turkey didn't buy it from us. Just, I think we exported for a few months. Then Turkey didn't pay, so it stopped.
Right.
We provide gas to Armenia Republic. Just maybe a couple of months in winter when the situation is bad and they didn't pay because they don't have money to pay. We wanted to export the gas to India, but Pakistan was between, and Pakistan is the enemy of India. So they say, no, we are not going to let you pass a pipeline. We have been isolated because of the Islamic regime, and few generations of Iranian are paying for these stupid policies. They have been victim, and the winners, like Qatar, like Turkey, for sure they don't want the Islamic regime to go because as long as they are there, a huge amount of benefit is guaranteed for them.
Thank you. Well, one thing that you mentioned briefly was about the tourism in Turkey. I understand that lots of Iranians, I know personally some families who relocated after the Islamic Revolution successively to Turkey. They bought properties there. They are working under the very hard conditions. But anyway, they are living on their own costs. They bringing the money from their retirement, from the properties that they have in Iran, whether they sold it or they rented it. So in fact, they're enriching the domestic economy of Turkey. But one thing that is really striking for me is independently from that, lots of Europeans, Americans, the people from the Western Hemisphere, if they want to get a sense, of Oriental culture, going to some country which is more or less safe, the first country they tip on is the Turkey. So they won't go to Iran because of various reasons that we do know on the global scale. So this is also another threat to Turkey. If the Islamic regime in Iran would collapse, so it means the tourism, starting with the normal, natural, cultural tourism up to the medical tourism would be not the case for Turkey anymore because Iran has much more to offer. What do you think about that?
Exactly. That's another source. So there are a lot of economic reasons for Turkey, beside Qatar, to be so active these days in order to somehow stop President Trump for helping Iranian people to get rid of the current regime. Uh, some people expected Russia to be active these days, but what we have seen from Russian side was silence, absolute silence. They didn't say anything. And surprisingly for some people, of course, Qatar and Turkey are doing even more than the Islamic regime leaders to keep them in charge. This is ridiculous, but that's a fact.
I see. Now, moving to the second question, which is really very personal also for me, is that something which is actually what eating me, what is troubling me, and lots of other observers of the situation in Iran is that is this conspicuous and striking silence on behalf of the celebrities and the well-known activists when it comes to Iran. There are often the same actors, figures who spoke passionately when the Gaza war ignited, Israel-Hamas war, and the social media was really rallied and in fact filled with those individuals who were promoting deliberately or ignorantly the Islamist jihadist Hamas against Israel. Also, and during the 12-day war, we saw that that even some of Iranian leftists, unfortunately, I have to admit, they stood on the side of national integrity of Iran, being against Iranians being attacked by Israel and later on by United States. Now, the very same people, they're silent right now. And my question is, what does this selective concern just tell us about this so-called performative activism, this selective perception of reality? Is this fear of being labeled Islamophobic? The people are, I'm generally asking myself, are the same people who are now silent, are they silent because they think if they would go and demonstrate against Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, they would be labeled and branded as Islamophobic? Or is it is it ideological narrative, or they're just simply are paid protesters, which are not paid anymore, so that's why they have no reason to go and talk about what's going on in Iran?
People who have conscience and they really care about humanity, when uh, between 12,000, some reports say 20,000 people have been killed for demonstration, for protest in a country within few days, for a country that the criminal regime just shuts down the internet, and in some cities even the power, they cut off the power in order to use the opportunity to do a massacre. If really there is a conscience, people should really raise their concern. They should talk about it. They should make one or two posts in their social network, especially for those who have millions of followers. The fact is, when we talk about celebrity, mainly we talk about cinema and music. Big majority of celebrities are either in cinema or in music industry. These people, let me be very frank about that. These people usually have lack of morals. These people are extremely uneducated. These people go with fashion, and they are orchestrated by people from behind the scene, either by payment or by telling them, if you don't do this, you won't have the popularity or the position that you have right now. so we can really give you a hard time. So you will be removed from all of your privileges. Therefore, you see when, say, even in as a matter of fact, something bad happened in Gaza and some civilians died. Yeah, that's the worst thing that happened in Gaza. Yeah, and some civilian died 20, 30 because of a mistake in attacking a building or things like that. First of all, it was a war. So 7th of October happened. Then it was a retaliation and punishment of those who were in charge of that crime. In this fight between two armed forces, the Israeli army and Hamas, some innocent people may have been killed. That's a fact. Now, same people who were trying to break the windows to come to the streets to act like crazy people, completely hysteric behavior in universities, in their music concerts, in their social network, everywhere, even attacking the Israeli, I don't know, airline offices here and there, or killing some Jewish people here or there. Now they see that not due to a conflict of two armed forces like Israel and Hamas, but the conflict between armed forces of the Iranian regime and defenseless, innocent people of Iran. Several thousand people got killed, many of them very young and some of them underage. Shooting from very close distance. And very obviously they shut down the internet so they prevent the reports or clips to come out. When they see that and they don't react, means whatever they did for Gaza, for Hamas, for Palestinian, they were just show. They were just shows. There was no reality in it. There was no humanity in it. Who says that 12,000 or 20,000 of my compatriots, Iranians, their lives are less valued than some of the Hamas guerrilla and maybe some Palestinian civilians? Who said that? So the reason they don't react, first of all, they have been orchestrated before. Being left is a fashion. If you want to be recognized by media, by Hollywood, by the music industry, act left. It gives you money, it gives you fame. If you swim against the wave, you will be punished. They have done it to several people who tried to do it. That's one thing. Another thing is some people by ideology hate Israel. This is their nature. Now, Iranian people raise against the Iranian regime. Iranian regime is anti-Israel. So they say, since Iranian regime is anti-Israel, and these people in the streets try to overthrow the regime, so we hate them because they are pro-Israelis. So this is the way that they categorize people, you're with Israel or against Israel, and they try to punish them by ignoring them. Some of them are silent, but few of these celebrities even expressed their concern that we are really worried. Trump shouldn't attack the Islamic regime. This is not your task. This is not your duty. So that means, if I want to interpret it, let mullahs kill Iranian innocent people. Who cares? This is exactly the translation of what they say. So what Farshid became very clear to me is all of these Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Red Cross, I don't know, Watch, all of these small and big organizations who care about human rights, about children's safety, about torture, about lack of freedom of speech, all of those are totally useless. Or if I want to be very optimistic, I say they are totally useless. If I want to be more realistic, is these organizations have been funded and maintained by people who are, to me, against human. They are not human. So the worst thing that they do, the biggest thing that they do is they condemn something sometimes. Yeah, they condemn about Iranian civilians who got killed in the past few days. They even didn't condemn, even a condemnation, just a condemnation that we are concerned, we are sorry, this was bad, we didn't want to see that. The UK government didn't lift a finger. They didn't express their concern. Macron at least said, we are sorry to see that. This is not the right way to handle your protesters. That was the maximum thing that Macron said. German foreign secretary was the only one in Europe who really said something about it. And the other person was the prime minister of Japan. Nobody else cared. And this is not a good feeling, Farshid. You feel you are on your own. Nobody cares about you. You have to care about whatever happens in the world and become worried about all people in the world. But when it comes to your own people, they totally ignore it.
Exactly. And just to underline and emphasize what you mentioned before, a few hours ago, I was watching an interview. There was a press interview of Minister of Foreign Affairs, the State Secretary of Iran, Araqchi, in front of some reporters. You don't see the reporters, but you see him talking just. He said that for them, and I really quote what he said, that what is going on in Iran for us is the continuation of the 12-day war. It was very striking for me
Mhm.
that what he identified as what's going on in Iran, the mass slaughter, the execution, cutting down the internet, even the landlines, even just electricity outage in different cities for several hours, he literally identified that battle that they are doing against the protesters who he's calling riots or rioters is the continuation of the 12-day war. And that's very interesting how this narrative works. I'm circulating in other, in fact, forums than you. People are that are circling me are academics, scholars, students, and I have a very clear presence in Facebook, and I'm connected to at least hundreds of academics of Middle Eastern Islamic studies. A big portion of them are Iranians. I barely saw even a simple message just sympathizing with their own people. I hear messages and here and there from my fellow Arabs, students who are working with me or students who are working as side job as translators. They are expressing their concerns, even partially Arabs from the Middle East, from Syria, even from Jordan, and they're asking what's going on in Iran. And now, in this scale, I see a very crashing silence on behalf of some academics on the social media of Iranian descent. I don't understand
Uh,
it.
Farshid, Iranian abroad, expatriate Iranians did a great job in the past few days for demonstration against the regime across the Europe and North America. They did fantastic job, to be honest. But you mentioned academics. Have you seen somebody in university as an instructor, as an associate professor or professor in US, in Canada, in Europe right now, in human sciences, not engineering or medical sciences, in human sciences, who is right wing? You don't see
Honestly,
any.
to be honest, I don't know anybody in my
It's a
circle at all.
taboo. It's a taboo. If you are in human science and you're not left, you're not left liberal. There is no way they give you a position, even as a simple instructor. So if they are lefties, what do you expect? They don't care because they like the Islamic regime. And it's not specific to Iranians. If it happens somewhere else in the world, you see the response of these people from that country. As long as that movement in their country shows signs of being right wing, they hate it. The current uprising in Iran, the Iranian revolution currently, is led by the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, is a nationalistic movement. It's for getting rid of the mullahs, the theocracy, the Islamic regime in general, bringing on a secular national government in charge. The leader of this movement is the oldest son of the previous king, Shah. That's the main reason lefties, not only Iranian lefties, they are minority, very small minority. The lefties who are big in Europe, in Canada, half of America, they don't like it. Because if it was a rainbow movement, colorful movement, like what happened in Georgia, what happened in Czech Republic by George Soros, all the media, all the celebrities were behind this movement right now. Remember, 3.5 years ago, 3 years ago, there was Zan Zendegi Azadi movement in Iran,
Even life
mainly
freedom
by middle
movements, yes.
class.
Yes.
And one pivotal center of that was rights of women for not having hijab. That movement, which was a very good movement, it was supported partially by some of these activists and celebrities in the West because they were feminist. So they look at it as, oh, okay, feminist movement. Let's go and support them to kick out men. The current movement, which is more comprehensive than 3 years ago, and it has direction, it has leadership, same boys and girls are there, but they don't get that
Exactly. I
much.
wanted to mention a quite big number of presents have been carried out by women, and within those victims, there are lots of young women between 18 and 25 years. This is not
Mhm.
just it is not because in the social media, often in European languages, what I'm reading in German, French, English or other languages, you see that it's try to mitigate the situation. It starts with the buzzeries. It's because of the economic crisis in Iran, because the inflammation that is going on in Iran, the value of real that was decreasing, and there is not even a talking about that maybe the initiation of that protest was the economic pressure that have been exercised on Iranian people, but it was just one element of this uprising.
Always any uprising in anywhere in the world happens with a ignition. You need an ignition. It could be the gas price has gone up. It could be the dollar has become strong and the Iranian currency has become almost nothing. So you need an ignition point for people to come to the street. That's not the main reason for the revolution. When they shout in the streets, long live with the king, Javid Shah, it shows the direction. They have chosen even the type of the regime after the Islamic Republic. This is totally different than 3 years ago. 3 years ago, the people in the streets were saying, we don't want mullahs.
But they
We
didn't
want
say
them.
it's probably what they want. It's exactly that is the
Absolutely.
turning point from the negative dialectic to a positive
And
dialectic.
Farshid, that's the main reason that 3 years ago we had about 700 dead out of these young boys and girls within 3 months. And this time we have had at least 12,000 people within 4 days from Thursday to Monday. Because the Islamic Republic felt even bigger threat this time.
Exactly. So now, uh, now just mentioning that what happened, particularly during the last few days, or to be more uh, precise, over the past 2 weeks since the uprising, the national revolution of Iranians against the mullah regime, we have seen an especially brutal crackdown. So
Mm.
do you see that there is a shift towards from an outright security state rule, and is it kind of relying on a very heavily violent power of the IRGC, the Basijis, the paramilitia? There are reports even that the Hashid al-Sha'bi or from Iraq, or the Houthis from Yemen, and other paramilitia from Muslim countries of the neighboring proxies of the Islamic Republic of Iran are coming into the Iran, cracking down the protesters. Do you think that now, at least, that narrative that often has been propagated on behalf of the Islamic regime, that they have a popular legitimacy, it is once forever is just diminished? Is there any legitimacy? I mean, even legitimacy within those milieu of the people who consider themselves as religiously inclined people, people who believe in God, who believe in religiosity, in whatever they believe. I mean, do you think that there would be any future for that? Would we understand that as the Shia legitimacy in the Middle East? Because there are fears that if mullahs would go and the regime collapses, the history of the 500 years old Shiism in the Middle East, particularly in Iran as a major Shiite country, let's
Mhm.
say by name, and Iraq and Lebanon, and maybe partially also in somewhere in Middle East, like in Yemen, it will be actually would be just in the dust of the history, in the garbage of the history. They say that one of the major concerns of Iranian Shia leaders, the supreme leader, is that with the collapse of the Islamic regime of Iran is not just the collapsing of the regime, is the collapsing of the 500 years legitimacy of the Shia religion in Iran, and maybe in
That's
the Middle.
exactly the case. That's exactly the case. It's political. Also, end of the regime would be the end of the Shia as a predominant religion and ideology in Iran, and consequently on few countries that you mentioned. Shia from the beginning, Shia with the 12 Imam, which became the predominant power in Iran from 5 centuries ago, to be exact, 1502.
101 by the
Uh,
Safavid dynasty, exactly.
1502, yeah, beginning of the Safavid dynasty. Uh, it was really a deviation even in Islam. So Muslim Sunnis are right when they say Shia is not Islam. But whatever it is, as a cult, by collapse of the Iranian regime, we will witness the collapse of the Shia as an important mainstream of the Muslims or Islamic movements in the region, because the funding has been done by the Iranian regime. They were supporting Shia in Pakistan. They were supporting Houthi in Yemen. They were supporting Hezbollah in Lebanon. They were supporting Hashad al-Shabi in Iraq. Uh, when there is no money, there is no blood in that vein. It dies. It dies. It's not specific to Shia. Whatever there is no money to support, it's going to die. And Shia is not an exception. So that's the reason that even Ayatollah Sistani, a big Shia cleric who sits in Najaf in Iraq, he's originally Iranian, but he has been living in Iraq, and he's the biggest Ayatollah among Shia in the world. He didn't say anything about the recent suppression of people, killing of people. He didn't say anything. He never was friend with Ali Khamenei. He was never friend with the Islamic regime. But he thinks that, okay, I don't like these guys, but if they fall, what happens to Shia? Shia falls. It's a package. It's either together or none of them. And people
Exactly.
see that. They saw the reaction of Ayatollah Sistani, which was nothing. If he had come and say, I'm concerned about people, how you can butcher people like this. These are human beings. They are our compatriots. They are Shia Muslims. You are criminals. Something like that. He could have bought some dignity for Shia. Okay, maybe there are good Ayatollahs, but we didn't get it. Even him, as an opponent of Ali Khamenei.
That's interesting. It means that the core Shia ideology
Mm,
would never surrender that oppressive, dehumanizing power that tried to, in fact, subjugate the people for the last 500 years. Now, there is a point at which the oppression and the repression, the oppressive power, stops working as a deterrent, as a retaining wall, and instead, the the resistance will be fueled by power. Do you
mm,
think that the Iranian society now, we are talking in this moment, has reached that point where this revolution, this national uprising is unstoppable? Is it maybe the reason why the Islamic regime, with all its powers, fortified up to the teeth, they're talking about using dushka guns, heavily military guns, and machine guns to do mass killings in on Iranian streets? Do you think that we are witnessing a psychological shift where there is really no regression? There is no fear of giving away
mhm,
something more durable, or something that means the eternal disobedience of the people. I don't want to
mhm,
compare, but if I would compare it, not from its identity, but with that what happened in 1905 and subsequently in 1915, in October Revolution, there was a momentum where the people reached that peak and they thought there is no retreat anymore. And the revolution took its power. Now, whatever came after, we do know, and nobody could say that was a necessarily popular revolution that happened. But I mean, not from the nature, but from the processes. Do you think that
mhm.
the Iranian people reached that momentum where they say there is no backward anymore? So this is the momentum.
Yeah, the Islamic regime lost its legitimacy completely 3 years ago when they killed a lot of children during the Zan Zendegi Azadi movement in 3 years ago. Always there was fear when you come to a street and they shoot you, you fear to go and protest. This time, people showed a huge level of bravery. It was really amazing. It amazed everyone, politicians and also ordinary people of the world. When you go for a revolution for, say, liberty, for justice, it may it may fail and it may end up in victory. But when it's for economy, for the poor living condition, there is no failure because this is a necessity. This is not a privilege. This is a necessity for human living. So if the unemployment is 40%, if the inflation is more than 60%, when the national currency has lost its value for 20 million% over the past 47 years, when your income is not proportion to your expenditures, you keep coming to a street. You want to change your life. You want to change the situation of your country. So it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. People do not come for freedom. People do not come for justice. They are the second or third priority for people. But when the main motive is you, Islamic government, have failed our country, you have brought us to this mess. You have bankrupted the economy of one of the flourishing country in the world in 79. And now, whenever we see is corruption, is incompetency, and it's lie and lie and lie, there is no way for people to stop. If President Trump act fiercely, fast, and efficiently, it's going to get to conclusion for Iranian people. To me, it's for the next couple of months. If he doesn't do so, people may go back to their homes for 7 months, for 10 months, for 1.5 years. But again, it happens because it's a direction of the history. You need to have a job. You need to pay the bills. You need to have a decent life or a minimum standard of living. You don't have it, you come back to the streets.
Perfect. So and so I have a very final, though very crucial question, a very um, defining. When it comes to the Western policy, and they do not exclude necessarily United States or Northern America by no way, there are narratives that whenever the Western countries, including United States, England, you name it, or just countries like Germany or France, they collaboratively invaded a Middle Eastern country, it ended in a catastrophe.
Mhm.
They recall the situation in Syria, just what happened after the collapse of the Bashar Assad regime. They go back, they look at the situation in Libya, they go back even further, they look at the situation in Iraq in 2003. They even talk about look at that what the chaos is uprising now, right now, erupting now in Mesoamerica, in in Venezuela, when they just captured the Maduro, who was definitely a cartel leader and a hub. His country was a hub for the Islamic terrorism, for Hezbollah, for the Houthis, for Hamas. And now they say that the Western countries are hesitating to act because they don't want that the history repeats. Sectarian movements would uprise in the country, and that Iran would be a second Iraq, a second Syria. How much does it say about the knowledge of the people from the West about Iran when they compare Iran with Syria, with Libya, with Venezuela even, or with Iraq?
Very good question. Let me approach it from two different angles. One of them is I don't want, and I think, Farshid, you don't want any kind of boots on the ground in Iran. It's not going to be productive. It may even harm us. What we want is US help to neutralize the suppression machine of the Islamic regime. It can be done by some smart military movement, electronic war, psychological war, freezing their bank accounts, trying to cause troubles for their leaders and their families inside and outside of Iran. These are things that US can do, and weaken that really weakens the strength of the Islamic Republic to suppress and oppress Iranian people. That and contribution to removal of killers of people the leaders, the commanders of the security forces, Revolutionary Guards leaders, all of those can help to really smash this gun machine, which has assassinated people and killed people in the past few weeks, and 3 years ago, and 5 years ago, and 8 years ago in different uprisings. So that's something. We don't want the American soldiers on Iranian soil. It's not going to help at all. But the second approach is what happened in Iraq during the George Bush time, what happened in Afghanistan during the George Bush, what happened in Syria 2014 during Obama time, and Libya during Obama and Hillary Clinton, her foreign secretary in that time. This comparison technically is not correct with current Iran. Libya, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Jordan, Lebanon, Yemen, a bunch of these countries, excluding Afghanistan, which is the other side of the Iran, all of them have become countries after the First World War, when Ottoman was disintegrated into little pieces and bits, and the winners of the war, Great Britain and France, decided to make countries out of these lands. So they made Saudi Arabia, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, Kuwait, and so on. So these are countries which were formed by contracts. British politicians, French politicians sat in several meetings and they draw lines on the map and say, okay, east of Jordan River should be Hashemite or Jordan. West of it and Lebanon and the current Israel should be under mandate of Britain. Syria should be under mandate of France. Suez Channel should be under supervision of British government and French government together. Iraq went to Britain. Saudi went to Britain. So these countries are not historical countries. With all respect to their current independence and national identity, historically, technically, they were not countries. Iran has been a country, and Iranian recognize themselves as Iranian, belong to this national identity from centuries ago. We are talking about at least with the current name and current border, or even bigger border than the current Iran, from beginning of Sassanid dynasty. So we are talking about 19 centuries ago, with the exactly conception of and realization of the nation.
Statehood. Yes, exactly.
Nation, statehood, and nation state, which later on in 19th century in Europe was introduced to the European nation. So therefore, the feelings of belonging to this state is there among Iranians, regardless of their religion or mother language or whatever they have. These 90 million feel it. You don't have it, and you didn't have it before in Iraq, when they had these courts with Arab Shia and Arab Sunni and Turkmens and Assyrian. Okay, you guys now are compatriots. You are one country, yeah? Or same for the Syria, same for Afghanistan in east of Iran. Therefore, we are talking about two different categories here. It's not comparing apple with apple. So the chance of civil war or disintegration or catastrophe, things like that in Iran is almost zero because of its nature. And second of all, nobody wants, and even I think President Trump doesn't want it, that the American soldiers want to invade Iran. What we want is their smart move to remove those people who have been in charge of killing people, and they can still kill people as long as they are in charge.
Thank you. So there is just as a concluding question to that what we discussed. I mean, when I announced that I would like to have a conversation with an Iranian expert, my compatriot and my fellow thinker, Shahin, there were questions on behalf of some students of mine, but also some colleagues of mine. They say now the reason with why we are reluctant about that, what we think about if there would be any military invasion against the Islamic regime, and why we are comparing Iran with Syria or Iraq. Of course, they are not comparable because Iranians are Iranians and the Arabs are Arabs. But Iran is also a composite of the Kurds, the Baluch, the Turkic tribes, the Turkmens, the Arabs, and Persians. So, what about if sectarian movements in Iran they would take the opportunity
Mhm.
to uprise and declare a kind of a semi-independence from the central power. And that is a question which is I would like to really put it into discussion. What would glue all those different Iranians into
Mhm.
one unity, into the one solidarity, whether you are Baluch or the Kurd or
Mhm.
Persian, or you are a person from the Turkic tribes, you're Turkmen, you're Turkish speaking, you're Arabic speaking. What is the matter of unity that differentiates
Mhm.
Iran from its neighboring countries?
I think the answer of this question was implicitly mentioned in the previous question. There was no contract between Baluchi and Kurds and Persians and Azeris and Armenian sometime in the history in Iran that let's be together. We didn't have it. What is the year of independence of Iran? Many of these Middle Eastern countries between the two wars, First and Second World War. Some of them after the Second World War, like Pakistan, India, Israel, 1946, 47, 48. What is the year of independence in Iran? We don't know. As long as we have history, we know that Iran existed. What I'm saying here is not just some nice nationalistic feelings, it's a historical fact. Please check with your professors in universities or check it on Google or ChatGPT. Therefore, we don't have any cross section of the history right there that these people wanted to stay together. And now, maybe in 2026, one of them say, wait a minute, we don't want to be with you anymore. We want to go our own separate way. We didn't have it. This country has been formed naturally over centuries, over millenniums because of these collectual feelings and feelings of belonging to a culture, to a land. Therefore, the problem that right now we have in Tehran is the problem that people have in Mashhad, in Isfahan, in Tabriz, in Sanandaj, in Zahedan, in Ahvaz. Economy, discrimination, lack of justice, lack of freedom, and a bunch of crooks who have been looted the country. This is the concern of every Iranian, regardless of his background. Therefore, fortunately, we don't have that type of challenge, and I'm 100% positive we don't get that. We don't get that issue in coming years after collapse of the Islamic regime.
Thank you so much for this very concluding, very clairvoyant message to all people who are watching this video. And just to wrap up and perhaps to close our conversation, I would like to give you, dear Shahin, as a political activist, as a person who has been closely and passionately watching the evolvement of the national uprising of Iranians for the last few days, and who was politically active for the last decades within Iran, outside of Iran. what would be your message for the people who are studying Middle Eastern and Islamic studies, who want to get a sense of what's going on in Iran? What would be your, let's say, message to people who would like to understand on what side of the history they have to
Mm,
stand right now, whether they are Iranians or non-Iranians, as
mhm,
political activists, as someone who closely followed Iranian events? What would be your message for these people who just hear the name of Iran and they're puzzled?
mhm. Iranian people are looking for a conventional, regular living. They don't want something exceptional. They want to live like many other nations in the peace, in the prosperity, with a good economy, with a government who doesn't put them down, who doesn't suppress them, who doesn't loot the country resources, who doesn't spend the country resources for funding the proxy groups. They don't want Iranian people, when they need their own money, they don't want their regime to waste their money for building all kinds of shrines and buildings and mosques of Shia here and there. They don't want a group of corrupted, extremely corrupted mullahs to rule the country. They don't want something really exceptional. All they want is a regular living. This is a minimum that any nation can expect to have. Now, the Islamic Republic regime pretends that they are anti-imperialism. They are against US, they are against the Western values, they are against Israel. This country has given ransom to any other power for the sake of opposing the US. It's not called independency. If you sell your oil with 30% discount to China, and even for that 70%, you don't get paid in dollars, but you have to go and buy Chinese products in yuan. If you give, according to the confession of the Islamic leader, more than $80 billion worth of uh, oil value to Syria in the past 3 decades, the money which has gone, and there is no way we can get even a penny of that back. This is heartbreaking for Iranians who are suffering, who are suffering. They really feel discriminated when they cannot have a very minimum standard of living. An engineer, uh, educated person in Iran gets paid $350 a month.
In best cases, yes.
Yeah, while the cost of living is not that much far from America. On the other hand, they see the family of the regime leaders, the ministers, the MPs, they've got their their families with very, very fancy houses like palaces, extremely luxurious cars, big and fat bank accounts in Europe, in US, in Canada. This kills people. And I completely understand my compatriots. So understand us. We don't want something extraordinary. We want a respectful, reasonable life, which has been taken away from us under the current regime. And there is no way with the current establishment we can get our lives back.
Thank you so much for your final message. Fellow listeners and spectators, you can just watch this channel on YouTube, but also I'm gonna send it to the friends and fellow thinkers to watch this video. make your comments, share your thoughts. Thank you so much, Shahin Jan, for your insight. We tackled on lots of issues, starting with Qatar, Turkey, the issues with the uprisings in Iran, the comparison of Iran with other neighboring countries. Thank you so much for this insightful conversation, and hopefully I can get back to you for another conversation in a free Iran. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.